Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe here. Today we're going to talk about a specific genre of crime. This is going to be probably new to many of you. Some of you probably heard it, might have heard something about it, not sure exactly what it is. So I'm going to try and give you a little more detail on the incel community. Incel stands for involuntarily celibate. They are categorized in the United States, Canada, and in the United Kingdom as potentially part of domestic terror groups. But their main goal is not terrorism. They're not a terrorism group. They're more of a group of people who have some psychological beliefs about themselves and their place in society and sexuality. And that creates the anger in them that can, at times, lead to violent outbursts. So we're going to talk a little bit about them today. A couple of minutes so you understand, because you may come across an investigation with something strange in it, something weird, characteristics of a suspect or whatever, and you're not really sure what it is. We need to keep our minds open and be able to look at all possibilities. And understanding the incel community and some of the things about them can help you if you come across something like this. So first, I want to thank our sponsors who are here. Okay, so we see up here, we got Blue 360 Media. Blue 360 Media is my publisher. They publish my books, but they also publish all kinds of books for law enforcement, from state-by-state guides to updates on your search and seizure to new technology in law enforcement. Everything you could want about law enforcement is found at blue360media.com. So I want you to go there. Our other sponsor is Medical Essential Diagnostics. Right now, they're only operating in New Jersey, but what they do is for any municipal, state, local, or county worker in the state of New Jersey, you can go to one of their 5 clinics in the state of New Jersey and get a soup to nuts medical evaluation. They do it in a couple of hours, but they do cardiovascular, they do allergies, everything, blood panels, and there's no cost to you, right? So medicalessentialdiagnostics.com, go look them up. And Blue 360 Media. Get what you need, including my books, The Interview and The Investigation. All right, so the incel community. There are male incels and female incels, and they normally self-identify. This group calls themselves incels, involuntarily celibate. So there's some information right there in their title that they use for themselves. They don't want to be celibate. They feel that they are forced to be celibate. This is the ideology of the group. The males, when we talk about male incel members, they adhere to the 80-20 rule. Actually, I think the females do as well. The 80-20 rule, which means that 20% of the male population, the very good-looking, the powerful, the rich, this 20% of men have access to all of the beautiful women. The most desirable women in our society will only activate themselves and be involved sexually with 20% of the men. And in the community, they identify these males, this 20% of powerful, wealthy, good-looking men, as chads, right? So there's terminology and everything, and they call them chads. On the female side, there are the most beautiful women, the supermodels, the people that you see that are absolutely gorgeous. And people can't have access to them, right? Unless, of course, you're in that 20% of the male population that is beautiful, handsome, or wealthy, powerful. So the females that are in that high-end group are known as Stacys. So you have Chads and Stacys. These are the beautiful among us, the most desirable sexually among us. So in some of my courses, anybody who's been to my courses, you understand when I talk about sexual assault or the component of sexuality. And there's another episode we had here on want crimes and drive crimes. You should go back and watch that, listen to it, because it gives you a lot of insight into how the human brain works. And when we see, I'll give you a quick rundown so it makes sense when we talk about the incels. A want crime is something that, you do because you want something. I want drugs, I want money, I want a stereo system, so I do burglaries, whatever. A want crime you can put off if the circumstances are not right. I was going to break into cars, but there's cops all over tonight, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to break into cars. A drive crime, on the other hand, is something that's built on our human drives, right? So we need to eat, we need to have a shelter, and we have a sex drive, right? That sex drive is very powerful for human beings. It keeps the species alive. That's why we have a sex drive. So when we look at the sex drive of humans, there's a spectrum. So they go from one end where there's very low interest, very low desire to be involved in sex, no constant feelings of being aroused or wanting to be aroused, all the way to the other side, to where we have psychosexual killers. This is the twisted end of the drive, where these people are using sex as a weapon, because we know that sexual assault is really not about sex. It's about power over another person. And people at that far end of the spectrum, those psychosexual serial killers that kidnap, rape, brutalize, keep people in their basements for as long as they can, and then eventually kill them, or they kill them as part of the process of assaulting them. That's at the far end of the spectrum, and everything else is in between. Well, there are proclivities amongst people on that spectrum that can be twisted. So you can have your pedophiles. Pedophile is a sexuality where they're attracted to children on that spectrum, but that's not a normal way of looking at the world. People aren't, the average person is not sexually attracted to children. And just like at the other end, those people that want to kidnap, abuse, rape, and murder people, that's not the norm either. Most people are kind of in the middle. You like some things, you don't like some things. You have a normal sex drive. When that sex drive is twisted, it urges people on. They can't not act on it. They might put it off for a moment, but they're going to go find more victims. They're going to go do more things. So the incel community, based on my investigative experience, is they are also on that spectrum in the area of damaged sexuality. Now, there's a lot of research that's beginning out there. They haven't done a lot, but they're starting to understand as these groups come forward. They self-identify. There's websites you can go to. There's entire things you can learn about this community. And we have seen some of them act out very violently. And that's why they're considered a domestic terrorist organization, cell, membership. I don't know that there's an organization you sign up as a member, but if you're in that philosophy, you believe these things that they do, there can be violence. So there was a guy in Canada who I self-identified as an incel, was very frustrated and angry and drove his car through a crowd of people and killed a bunch of people. There was a guy in California, I believe he self-identified as an incel, and he went out and stabbed and shot and killed a bunch of people because he was so frustrated. And in the United Kingdom, there was a young man who was very frustrated and killed a bunch of people as well, citing his frustration in not being able to get the girlfriend he wanted. Right? So now you kind of get the basic idea of what we're talking about. The incel community, the potential for violence is there, but like in many other things, we know that men have a tendency to express their violence outward against other people, where women have a tendency to express their violence inward towards themselves, to self-harm. So when we look at this community, the reason that you need to know about them and be aware of them is because you might have a strange investigation or a strange case where some of the facts don't match up to what you think is a normal case or a normal crime, a burglary, an assault, a homicide that doesn't have a sexual component to it that you can see. There's no rape, there's no forced sexual activity, but there are some other signs that happen. So one of the examples I can look at is when the college kids in the Idaho University were murdered in their apartment. 3 young women and a young man were murdered in their apartment. And the suspect that was developed through DNA and other things was another college-age kid who went to a college close by. Well, he's been identified, he's been arrested, and he's been charged. Now, whether he's guilty or not, that'll be determined by the court. What I find interesting about him is that when I first heard about this case, and you found out that somebody broke into the house where these 4 young people were staying, all of them were stabbed to death in their sleep. We haven't had any report of sexual activity there, that they were sexually assaulted, but maybe that just hasn't come out yet. But it doesn't necessarily have to be to fit the incel model. So these people were all stabbed in their beds and killed. The 3 young ladies were very attractive young ladies. The young man, handsome fellow, was dating one of the girls, and there was this attack. So the suspect in this case as they started to do background, they talked to people at his college, and he was known as someone who said strange things to women. He approached women in a very awkward way, to the point that he was considered a strange kind of guy on campus, which would lead you to believe maybe he's someone who could not connect with the women on his campus. And there's maybe some indication, it'll come out in the investigation, that he may have known one of the girls that were murdered. He may have pursued her, asked her out on a date, or had some interaction with her. We'll find out about that as it goes further. I'm not positive about that. I've read a lot about this case, but you're only getting what's being released until the trial starts. So this young man supposedly went into that house and stabbed and killed all of those young people in their bed. Now, we look at that and say there was no robbery, and he didn't sexually assault anyone, just went in and killed people. Why would we do that? Do we see that often? Somebody kills with no other motivation. We see people that will go in and rape and murder someone. We will see that they kidnap someone and abuse them. We will see that there's a grudge, there's a fight, and they kill someone. But we don't see that in this case. We simply see these 4 young people murdered in their beds by someone with a knife. Now, that's another area we need to talk about. I'm going to do a whole program on it. But the reality is, when we talk about drive crimes, especially sexually driven crimes, one of the things that we see in lots of relationship assaults and homicides, where one partner kills the other, normally the male kills the female, we see that they use a knife. And one of the hallmarks of this is multiple stabbings, okay? Because the knife is a phallic symbol. It is a power symbol, and you have that power over this other person. You're angry with them. Maybe they're trying to leave the relationship, break off your sexual connection to them. They want to be with someone else, and that's infuriating. It's frustrating. It's painful, and they strike out with the knife. So in my book, The Investigation here, all right? In my book, The Investigation, it's a brand new way to teach criminal investigation. I use as a backdrop the story of a very brutal double homicide that I investigated. And I tell that story and then do teaching about it. And in this story, which is true story, the names have been changed to protect innocent people that were involved. But the young man who did this was jealous and angry and felt possessive over his girlfriend, the mother of his child. And he believed she was having a sexual affair behind his back. He stabbed her 33 times, right? So these all start to fit together. They may sound strange to you, but the more you start to investigate these kind of things, you realize they all come together. So when I first heard about the Idaho murders and just what we've been told, my first thought was, this sounds to me like this young man may be an incel individual. He doesn't feel connected to be able to get the women he wants, and he struck out and attacked them, as others with that ideology have done before. So it was a couple of weeks after the news came out, and an FBI profiler came on, a retired guy, but he came out and he watches news like most of us investigators do. We always pay attention. And he came on the news and he said, this has some hallmarks of an incel killing. And I was very happy that someone with profiling experience also saw the things I was seeing. So now that you know what these things are, you understand what the incel community is. The things that you need to know about them is that this 80-20 rule, this belief that only the best looking, most powerful men, or the richest men, people that have great assets, are the only ones that have access to the most beautiful women. Regular guys don't get beautiful women, but you can be an ugly guy that's rich and you can get beautiful women. We see this all the time, don't we? So this is kind of, to most of us, okay, you say, all right, well, that's frustrating. I can't get the supermodel because I'm not the Brad Pitt, but we kind of move on with our life. The people who are incels really take this to heart, and they are frustrated by the fact that they don't have access to the sexual partners they want. So that is the part of the incel philosophy. They call it the black pill society. So you can look up black pill, and it tells you a lot about what they say. They're starting to do research now more and more on people who believe this philosophy and identify this, so we can understand it better as it goes forward. So maybe we can help them so they don't strike out and do bad things. Women, like I said, there are women incels, and they feel that they may not be beautiful enough or physically attractive enough to attract the rich, the powerful, the very good-looking men, and they get frustrated. But like I said, we see women have a tendency to internalize that and hurt themselves, do self-harm, where the males take that anger that frustration, and they throw it out on other people. That's why we see the attack in the United Kingdom, we see the attack in Canada, we see the attack in California, and maybe the attack in Idaho. So what you want to do is look up that article, Lieutenant Joseph Pangaro, Incel article, and you look it up, it should pop up. I wrote for Blue Magazine. I wrote that article, and it appeared in a couple other places. So you might see that in the book, in the investigation. I do an entire block in there about incels to give you more information. So as you're investigating, you come across something strange, you never know what you're looking at. You may be looking at an incel-related crime. And we need to understand this as we go forward. We're starting to learn more and more about it. And if you come across something like that, I would love to hear from you. So that's what I want to talk about today, the incel community and the crimes we may have to investigate. So pay attention. Look at Blue 360 Media, Medical Essential Diagnostics, Stay Healthy. Like and share the channel. Tell your friends about it. I'm going to do more and more training. I'm going to have more interviews. There's a lot of good interviews on here already. And I hope to see you down the road. This is Lieutenant Joe for the Blue Heart Podcast.